Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for watching today's edition of Alaska Weather on this 21st day of October 2018, Sunday afternoon. On the first graphic here, heavy rains moved in again to the southern Kenai Peninsula, Prince William Sound area, and eastward along the North Gulf Coast, where Yakutat picked up 3¼ inches of rain in the last 24 hours. A little heavier there at Portage Glacier at into Turnagain Arm with 3.87 inches. And then Peterson Lagoon, that's down on the south coast of the Kenai Peninsula, southwest of Seward. They had 3.16 inches, and Seldovia picked up 1 2/3 inches, again, all in the last 24 hours. But with the heavy rain, there are no flood advisories or warnings out anywhere. Even the flood advisory for Seward's been canceled, ended this afternoon, a couple hours ago. But there is still a wind advisory here for the passes of the Alaska Range, which remains out until midnight tonight, for gusts of 55 miles an hour, sustained winds anywhere from 20 to 30 miles an hour, gusts 55. And that's through the passes. And strongest wind gust I saw this afternoon so far is 40 miles an hour at Fort Greely. Everywhere else was down in the 20 to 30, 35 mile an hour range. So system coming up tonight, those winds should increase this evening and then drop back off after midnight tonight. Moving on to the satellite imagery, here's the storm system right there pulling northwestward across the Aleutian Range into northeast Bristol Bay this afternoon, starting to slowly weaken. Moisture mostly to the west here. Again, pretty good rainfall. Kodiak, they picked about ½ an inch of precipitation, but some precipitation trying to get into Cook Inlet. It was, again, heavier down south with Homer Seldovia seeing much more rain than northern Cook Inlet did. A break here along the North Gulf Coast, precipitation a little more showery with the heavier stuff back toward the Kenai Peninsula and Prince William Sound. And then with the main frontal boundary here that's pushed to the east, kind of stalled out. And so south flow, that's what gave Yakutat the heavier rainfall and some rain in across the southeast coast. Amounts got lighter as you headed southeast there across toward Dixon Entrance. This portion of the front up to the north really weakening, and mainly just clouds during the day today and into the afternoon with just isolated rain or snow shower associated with it. Really couldn't find much at all up there. And then lower clouds, easterly winds and temperatures in the 20s up along the Arctic coast. That gave a few fog, or gave a few flurries with maybe some patchy fog, but downsloping winds tend to dry it out over the Noatak Valley, especially out along the northwest coast there, Kotzebue to Kivalina, and mostly dry but breezy for the Seward Peninsula, especially through the Bering Strait, southward into the St. Lawrence Island area. We saw gusts up to around 40 miles an hour for the at Gamble, and same thing, 40-mile-an-hour wind gusts out of the northwest there at Tuksuk Bay. More northerly, you can see it looks like clearing out there around Savunga, and a little bit of precipitation with a band right through here, but nothing significant. A few showers over at or across the Pueblos today, but winds gusting up to about 45 miles an hour for peak wind gusts at St. George today out of the northwest, and breezy conditions down along the eastern Aleutians with showers from Unalaska in across the Alaska Peninsula today. And on the chart, there's that low tracking into northeast Bristol Bay, kind of a tight gradient here, and even on the backside, Kilbuck, back over near the mountains there, had gusts to about 50 miles an hour out of the northwest, but they're at about the 2,000-foot level there. Otherwise, again, I mentioned about 40 miles an hour along the southwest coast. And Augustine Island had a peak wind gust 61 miles per hour today, and winds close to 40 miles an hour at Anchorage International Airport, as well as 15 to 25 up through the Copper River Basin. And again, the heaviest rain, Kenai Peninsula southwestward here, with rain extending all the way up on the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range, only a few hundredths of an inch, and some light possible snow shower, rain or snow shower, depending on your elevation here, across the Kuskokwim Valley areas. And then pretty scattered on the showers out over the Bering Sea, as I mentioned there, as well as the Aleutians. A little more continuous precipitation going on with some showers there, kind of an enhanced area right through here extending down to Adak and Atka, but dry conditions back out towards Shemya. And for tonight, we'll see that front really just barely even a trough in through here with a little bit of moisture possible, but nothing significant. No change up there on the North Slope Arctic coast, still with the east-northeast winds, breezes, and occasional fog or flurries possible, mostly cloudy skies. This low slowly weakening now near Cape Newenham by 4 a.m. tomorrow morning, up to 986 millibars. So cloudy, showery conditions, unsettled, but lighter winds across the Alaska Peninsula. Definitely lighter winds here, Kodiak Island, up along the western Alaska range. Winds will be diminishing, and after midnight also that wind advisory ends for the eastern Alaska range through the passes there with drying conditions, possible clearing, and really not much going on out over the Aleutians. That next system really weak and is still west of Shemya at this time, with a wave having developed along that frontal boundary here, kind of takes over and enhances everything, pulls some moisture northwestward, and another system to the southwest of that. They're going to kind of combine. This will pull off to the northwest, this will swing around, and something like that for tomorrow. Actually, this pulls back a little to the west there. So that'll bring the wind and rain again late tonight, and then push it northward tomorrow with that warm front there, and increasing winds along the southern coast of the Panhandle there, actually all along the coast, with a break here for the Gulf of Alaska, a break over the Copper River Basin, much of the eastern and central interior areas, still a chance of showers from Cook Inlet to the Alaska Range with this trough axis here down into Kodiak. Isolated showers, Kenai Peninsula now. Rainfall amounts will definitely be much lighter than they were in the last 24 hours. Still unsettled and a little breezy out here over the southwest interior with some rain and snow showers. And the breeziest conditions now up across St. Lawrence Island to the Bering Strait. No change, same pattern up there over the Arctic coast. May see a little bit of an increase with some of that moisture slipping on up. Could be a little more widespread flurries and light snow, but nothing, again, significant. And this system still holding west of Shemya. Outlook for Tuesday, that low deepens, swings around, pulls northwestward to about this position south of the Kenai Peninsula by the afternoon hours, and that will tend to stall this front out along the southeast coast, although during the day on Tuesday in the afternoon should push far enough east to spread rainfall all the way down to the Queen Charlotte's across Dixon entrance. So look for a round of moderate to heavy rain again here for the North Gulf Coast, starting tomorrow night, continuing through the day Tuesday, and another batch of moderate heavy rain also here for the southern Kenai Peninsula into western Prince William Sound with that good southeast flow. Front pushes northward. Precipitation field with this may hold together a little better than the one that pushed through today, so look for possibly a little more widespread rain or snow out ahead of the front, but that'll be mostly rain in the milder areas south of the front. Dry to the north there, back to the southwest into the Kobuk, Koyukuk Valley areas, and northwest coast. Dry also for the Seward Peninsula, and a little breezy up there for the western Arctic coast. Nothing too bad though, with flurries ending possible clearing up their east side around Kaktovik and Barter Island. Big area of light rain, fog, and drizzle out here over the eastern Bering Sea. That becomes more showery as you head west, and strongest winds out here will be to the west over the central and western Bering of the 15 to 30, maybe gusts 40-mile-an-hour range there, but wet, breezy conditions for the Alaska from the Pribilofs down to the Fox Islands on the backside of this slowly weakening low center there. It'll be dropping off to the southeast by Tuesday night. And then low temperatures for tomorrow morning, Monday, starting the day out in the lower to mid-20s on the east side, upper teens through the Brooks Range, low 20s, eastern Beaufort Sea coast, mid to upper on the west side. And it looks like lows in the 30s to near 40 for southern Alaska, and mostly in the 40 to 45 degree range for the southeast coast. Those highs tomorrow won't change much there with the clouds and moisture. 40s for the highs, and lower 20s there for the upper Yukon Valley to Battles, with highs in the teens for the afternoon highs there for the Brooks Range, and just barely getting above 20 now on the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, mid-20s to the west, and 29 forecast high for Kotzebue, 34 for Nome, in the 30s here along the southwest coast. And then your Tuesday morning low temperatures in the mid-teens there over the eastern Brooks Range and in the lower to mid 40s for the southeast coast. And for the afternoon, 40s to near 50s southern Alaska here, and lower to mid 50s maybe, probably in the lower 50s northeast Bristol Bay, while the southeast coast highs 50 to 55, and in the lower to mid 20s for the Brooks Range on out to the Arctic coast, and lower 40s for the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta. Over the Aleutians, not much change, highs in the usual mid 40 range.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
First line weather graphic for Monday morning showing IFR along the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range all the way up and around, again, southern slopes here into the possibly the Talkeetna Mountains, more here western Prince William Sound up toward Valdez, and marginal VFR, Bering Sea, Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula into Bristol Bay with some IFR over the southwest mountains, IFR here Seward Peninsula and Lado Hills, and Brooks Range on up across the north slope, central eastern Arctic coast. Southeast coast got some IFR down along the south coast there from about Port Alexander on down toward western Dixon Entrance. And then for the afternoon, that slips on up to the north, covers about the northern half of the Panhandle with marginal VFR everywhere else. VFR breaking out, improving conditions here, especially with the Copper River Basin, North Gulf Coast, even western Prince William Sound. And the interior, not looking too bad here north of the Alaska Range. Start picking up some IFR again up over the Koyukuk, Upper Yukon Valley, up toward the south side of the Brooks Range. Still marginal to IFR north of the Brooks Range. Bering Sea, no change, got some IFR here due to northwest winds along the south side of the Alaska Peninsula and on Alaska Island. Tuesday morning, VFR, central interior, right on down to Cook Inlet, marginal of Kodiak eastward, Gulf of Alaska, and then breaks up as it gets in over the Panhandle. Some IFR here from Nabesna up across 40 Mile country there, but south of Eagle, more IFR to the northwest, Upper Yukon Valley, south side of the Brooks Range, western North Slope, still some here Seward Peninsula to the Lado Hills, Auckland Mountains, Kilburg and those areas, and still marginal VFR out here with VFR along and south of the central and eastern Aleutians. And then for the afternoon, swath of marginal conditions here from Kuskokwim Bay, Bering Sea, right northeastward there across the Upper Yukon Valley, IFR over the North Slope, otherwise marginal for the Arctic coast. Narrow band now of IFR remaining. North Gulf Coast, possibly western Prince William Sound, otherwise marginal at times Cook Inlet. Sit in the Valley, VFR, northeast Bristol Bay to Lake Iliamna, VFR, Kodiak, VFR, marginal for the Panhandle. Passes Anatuvik, IFR tomorrow, same forecast for Adigan. And for Lake Clark and Merrill, we've got marginal VFR with the IFR conditions. Lowest conditions will be on the eastern entrance of both passes. Same pattern for Rainy, so IFR, eastern entrance, otherwise marginal. And for Windy, VFR, but the southern entrance here started out marginal but becoming VFR as well, probably by late morning. And Isabel, marginal becoming VFR. Mentasta, VFR the entire day. Tanita, VFR. And Portage, IFR to start, becoming VFR into the afternoon. Chilkoot and White, IFR, gradually improving to marginal VFR later in the day. Freezing levels, 4,000 feet central interior, 2,000 feet back to the north and northwest. Surface still northward there over the open waters of the Chukchi Sea, and then down here along the North Gulf Coast. 2,000 feet there over the Yukon, and then quite a gradient here across the Panhandle up to 10,000 feet over towards Stewart and Hyder. Icing, moisture coming in, so be some areas of considerable moderate to small area here over the southern southeast coast, otherwise isolated on up to the northwest. This probably the best chance of icing here. Big heavier area here will be actually shifting north and then kind of northwest. It'll just graze here the southeast coast overnight, tomorrow night, Monday night, and into Tuesday as it slides on up toward the North Gulf Coast on Tuesday. Otherwise, for tomorrow, we've got some icing threats here. Kenai Peninsula, Barren Islands, Kodiak, Alaska Peninsula, maybe into the Kuskokwim Valley. And the jet stream showing a trough digging southeastward here and then eastward. That's going to tend to bend that jet stream back around over the next couple of days. Already starting to see hints of that right here. Otherwise, south to north, 100 to 110 knots into the southeast coast, and the jet well south of the Aleutians and Bering Sea. And 9,000 feet, northwesterlies around this low, just southwest of Kuskokwim Bay. 10 to 20, 25 knots, eastern Aleutians swinging back around 25 to 30 over the southwest interior. Lighter to the north, 10 to 20 eastern interior, and up to 60 knots here in the southeast coast there. Pretty good winds at 9,000 feet. Those still even at 3,000, got 55 knot winds coming up off the south coast tomorrow, but much lighter over toward the border in western Canada. 15 to 25, Gulf of Alaska, light wind southeast or much of the eastern and northern interior. 25 to 35 here over the southwest coast. Moderate turbulence, especially over the panhandle.
Hello again, I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service with another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. And joining me today are not just one, but two people, both with the last name Stevens, which is even more fun, but no relation. We have Eric Stevens from Dehne and George Stevens, who is a mechanical engineering student from the University of Alaska Fairbanks. Did I get that right?
Yep.
Awesome. And today you guys brought a really cool toy, or I should say tool, with you. It's a sandbox, but why are you guys working on a sandbox?
Well, it's part of our senior design project, and we were approached by AKwx to build this for them. They had a proof of concept that they developed about a year ago, I think, and they wanted a more robust version that they could pack onto a plane and take places, and it's a handy learning tool for kids and adults.
So you're a mechanical engineering student. You've built a traveling sandbox for the experimental program to stimulate competitive research, EPSCoR, and Dehne's facilitated this. But why do we need a traveling sandbox?
Well, the prototype was such a big hit that they decided they wanted another one, actually two, that they could that would be easier to travel with, you know, possibly marketable even.
Okay, so this is a traveling sandbox that's got a lot of bits and pieces and a computer hooked up to it. What is the computer doing with the sand?
The computer actually uses a Kinect sensor to read the topography of the sand or the shape of the sand, and then the computer translates that into information which it projects using a projector onto the sand, showing topographical lines and which is representative of the shape of the sand.
Okay, so this is a live mapping tool?
Yeah. It's interactive. As you're moving your hands through it, it is actively following and changing the lines to fit what you're doing.
That sounds like something I could have in my backyard.
Yep.
It'd be a lot of fun. So you guys had to change the design a little bit to make this more Alaska-fied, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, how'd you do that?
Well, the original was made out of basically lumber and Simpson strong tie type stuff, and we rebuilt it to make it lighter and basically more transportable. We can pack it down to a fairly small size, and it can be loaded onto a plane and flown anywhere in the state.
Which you guys did today. And you have plans to take this in other places of Alaska, right?
Yep, we're actually going to be headed down to Homer with it later today.
Okay, very good. Eric, how does this fit into science learning around Alaska?
Well, you know what? I think it is a tool and it is a toy. And it brings out a smile from an 8-year-old and the smile from a 48-year-old with that inner 8-year-old wanting to get out. The sandbox, it's an interactive learning tool that teaches us how topography in the 3 dimensions is related to, say, a 2-dimensional map. More about that later. Just like George was saying, it's got a Kinect sensor, not just for video games anymore. It can sense out the lay of the land there, feeds that information in the computer. The computer identifies that, sends a signal to a projector to send topographic lines to map over that lumpy ground. So you get a 3-dimensional topo map out of it. And my favorite thing about it, this is the thing that stops people at the trade show, they stop at your booth and don't leave, is that you run your hand through that sandbox and it responds in real time. It remaps the topography as you get to be Mr. Tectonic Plate Drifter there. You can make things how you want. Well, what if we made a really high mountain here and a low valley there, and the lines adjust to what you did? It's a learning tool because it shows you that connection between these 2-dimensional topo lines and what's really out in Alaska. And Alaska's a place with all kinds of topography. You know, we're from the Great Plains. where topo maps tend to be just like blank pieces of paper. But Alaska is particularly gifted in this regard, and this tool helps us, I think, learn more about our state, really.
Absolutely. And so this is going to enhance STEM learning, the science, technology, engineering, and math in many different locations around Alaska then. This would be something that kids and teachers can get their hands on.
Mm-hmm. It sure is. And I mentioned the, it's like flypaper at a booth that, or at the Science Potpourri when we had Greg's original version of this sandbox, and that one was made out of scraps of wood, and it was a prototype. But even that one, before it had some of the refinements that George and crew have made for this newer, upscaled, maybe a 2.0 version of the sandbox, even that one was so attractive to people. It just demonstrated that this has potential to be a learning tool, an outreach tool, an education tool that now is portable and can go places in Alaska. Of course, there's only one sandbox, can't be everywhere at once, but hopefully it gets out there, gets the word out about EPSCoR and what science is being done here for Alaskans.
All right, that sounds really interesting, and I can't wait to get my hands in the sand and try this out for myself. We're going to demonstrate this here in our next segment of Alaska Weather Facts, but before we go, we want to remind you that EPSCoR, which is a new acronym for me now, but I'm going to remember this because you can follow them on Facebook and Twitter, and I invite you to do that. Alaska EPSCoR is also something that facilitates science learning at the University of Alaska around the state, and that stands for Experimental Program to Stimulate Competitive Research. So check that out, and make sure you tune in tomorrow because we're going to have the next version where we actually get our hands in the sand and check out how this works and demonstrates that topography. So for now, I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with this edition of Alaska Weather Facts, and we'll see you again next time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at today's sea ice analysis. Continuing to close off this open area here off the eastern Beaufort Sea coast. You can see pinching off northwest of Kaktovik there. Slow ice growth here along the coast. Increasing here now on the west side. The sheltered areas on the west side here starting to pick up a little bit of ice, and this area continuing to expand west. And also at the end of the Noatak River, some sea ice showing up on the satellite image. Kind of hard to see. I thought it might have been easier, but right in that area is a little bit of sea ice forming, and same trend expected for the next several days. Coastal water forecast, south to southeast 25 to 30 knots here on the south coast, east 25 to 30, north coast, north 20, Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay, and southeast 15 for Stevens Passage with gale force southeast winds for Clarence Strait, 35 knots, seas 10 feet. Outlook for Tuesday, south winds 15 for northern Lynn Canal, and those seas coming down to 3 feet with southeast at 20 for Stevens Passage and southeast 25 for Clarence Strait. Small craft advisories on the south coast, south winds 30 knots, seas up to 18 feet, even stronger winds coming back. Good gales there on the north coast, southeast 40, seas 20 to 22 feet. Prince William Sound tomorrow, east winds light 10 knots, seas pretty slight, northeast 15 for Cook Inlet. Small craft advisories, east winds 25 for both the Barren Islands and Kamishak Bay, North Gulf Coast, east to 20, seas 11 feet. And then next storm rolls in from the southeast to northwest, and southeast storm force winds will be coming into the North Gulf Coast to 50 knots, seas over 20 feet, north to northwest 40 knots, western North Gulf Coast to the Barren Islands with seas up to 15 feet. And Prince William Sound east at 40 knots with 10-foot seas, and gale warnings back in the forecast here for Cook Inlet, north of the Forelands, northeast 35, southern Cook Inlet, north 40, 14-foot seas, northwest 30 knots for Kamishak Bay. And for Bristol Bay tomorrow, southeast 25 knots, Alaska Peninsula, west-northwest 25 to 30, strongest on the Bering Sea side with those 11-foot seas. Kodiak Island, not too bad tomorrow, east to southeast 15 to 20. And moving to Tuesday, we'll see west winds on the north side of the peninsula at 25 knots, turn northwest, south side at 30 with 10-foot seas, and 25-knot northwest winds here, Castle Cape to Sitkinak, turn into gales from Sitkinak on up the east side at 35 knots. Small craft advisories for Shelikof Strait. And for the Fox Islands tomorrow, northwest 20-25 knots, seas 7 to 10 feet. Central Aleutians, not bad, northwest 15, about 20 out west till you get to Kiska to Shimiaratu, north of 15. And for Tuesday, small craft advisories out there, northwest 25, pretty uniform, 6 to 8 foot seas, kick it up to 30 knots for Adak and Atka. And also an increase in the winds here, 25 to 30 knots. Looks like strongest across Unalaska Island with 8 to 12 foot seas. Southwest coast for tomorrow. Small craft advisories, Nunivak Island to St. Lawrence Island, north 25, north 20 south of the island, northwest 20 for the Pribilofs, north 25 for St. Matthew Island. Outlook for Tuesday, northeast 20 for St. Lawrence Island, and hold on to the small craft advisories here along the southwest coast, north of the island there, then northeast 20, south side, and the Pribilofs northwest at 30 with 11-foot seas. Up along the eastern Boulevard Sea coast for tomorrow, east winds 20 knots, 3 to 4 foot seas, northeast 15 on the central coast, back up to 20 knots here on the west side, down to Cape Thompson, and then small craft advisories, Cape Thompson to Wales with 8-foot seas. And outlook for Tuesday, Wales all the way up to Cape Beaufort now, northeast 25, 7 to 6 foot seas, and northeast at 20 on the western Arctic coast. Really lightening up now, central and east side, light and variable, 5 to 10 knots, seas 1 to 2 feet, looking good up there. And for tonight, up that way, same pattern, probably lose the flurries on the east side if you had any at all today, but still a chance here down to the Brooks Range. Front really washed out now. Probably shouldn't even have drawn it in as a trough, but some leftover moisture here will keep it on the wet side. Kenai Peninsula northward into the Susitna Valley coming a little more showery. Next system develops along what's left of that frontal boundary and kind of re-energizes it, pushes some more moderate rain and increasing the winds into the panhandle. And for Monday, looking something like this. Next one here developing, and then for Tuesday that gets its act together, pulls the northwest and storm force winds into the North Gulf Coast, moderate to heavy rain. And across the panhandle, especially around Yakutat, and not so heavy rain with this low center over the southeast Bering Sea. Thank you for joining us.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.